right. Thank you for joining today's webinar on CSA and paperless validation, enhancing compliance and efficiency. In this session, we will explore how modern validation approaches like computer software assurance can simplify compliance while focusing on critical risk areas. We'll also look at how paperless validation tools can transform your validation processes, helping reduce manual effort, improve efficiency, and ensure regulatory compliance. I'm excited to guide you through how these concepts work in tandem to not only streamline your validation activities, but also bring significant improvements to your organization overall validation strategy. So let's get started. Before we dive into the content, let me introduce myself and my co-host for today. My name is Pratima Chaudhary, and I'm the validation expert with over 15 years of experience in validation, particularly in pharmaceutical and life sciences domain. I have been part of Millennium workforce for almost 2.5 years and have been working extensively to streamline validation processes, implement CSA principles, and transition to paperless systems to ensure compliance and efficiency. Now, I would like to pass it over to my co-host, Jeff, who will introduce themselves and share a little bit of their background. Jeff, over to you.
Of course. Hey, folks, my name is Jeff Ramos. I'm currently based here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been with ValGenesis for over 2 years now. Prior to joining ValGenesis, I was a software validation engineer here in Silicon Valley. All right, back to you.
Thank you, Jeff. We both are excited to share our insights with you all today, and we are looking forward to have an interactive session. So feel free to post any questions you may have over the chat, and we will try to address them at the end. For the smoother experience and any potential slowdowns with content streaming, I'm going to turn off my camera while I present. I'll be here with you throughout the session, so feel free to ask any question anytime, and we will be answering those questions at the end. So let's take a quick look at the agenda for today's webinar. We'll start by exploring the evolution of validation to give some context on how we got to where we are today. Next, we'll move into the key compliance and digital challenges that organizations face with CSV today. We'll also discuss the regulatory burden, the inefficiencies in documentation, and complexity of validating modern digital systems. After that, we'll dive into the computer software assurance, which is going to be the core of today's discussion. I will explain what CSA is, how it differs from traditional CSV, and then why it's an important shift towards risk-based validation. We'll also cover the CSA-based validation approach, just to understand where exactly the risk factors are applied in the process, focusing on critical thinking and reducing the unnecessary documentation. Once we have laid down the foundation for CSA, we look at the types of tests involved in CSA. Following that, we'll transition into paperless validation and discuss why this approach perfectly complements CSA by enhancing efficiency and reducing the manual work. We'll also review some of the key tools that can help organizations achieve a fully paperless validation process, ending with how CSA can be implemented with the help of tools like ValGenesis, and we'll talk about the key takeaways from the session at the end. Finally, I will hand it over to my co-host, Jeff, for a quick demo on the tool that brings some of these concepts to life. During the webinar, a question and answer chat box will be available for you to leave your questions at any time. We will answer them at the end of the webinar. So as we move forward, let's discuss why modern validation is essential in today's environment. Traditional validation methods like computer system validation are documentation heavy and can often be inefficient, especially in today's fast-paced digital landscape. As systems grow more complex and interconnected, regulatory expectations continue to rise. Organizations now need agile validation solutions that ensures compliance without hampering innovation or delaying the product development. This is where the shift towards modern approaches like computer software assurance comes in. So what exactly is CSA? CSA is a validation framework designed to focus on risk-based practices. Unlike CSV, which tends to center around comprehensive testing and extensive documentation, CSA takes a more targeted approach, emphasizing critical thinking and focusing on high-risk areas. This shift not only reduces unnecessary testing and documentation, but also helps the validation process, allowing teams to allocate their resources more effectively and focus on areas that truly impact product quality and patient safety. Now, why CSA? The FDA is advocating for this approach because it aligns with the need for more efficient validation practices. With CSA, the goal is to maintain the same level of regulatory data integrity, but without the access burden of documentation. This ultimately is going to lead for the faster project cycles and enhanced compliance and more innovative solutions that can quickly adapt to the evolving regulatory demands. Before we dive into the CSA, let's first look on how validation industry has undergone changes over the years. This can be traced through regulatory milestone and industry changes over several decades. 1980s is when the US FDA issued its guidance in general principle for process validation, which laid the groundwork for process validation in regulated industries. It primarily focused on manufacturing, but hinted at the need for ensuring the quality of computerized system. As computerized system became more prevalent during late 80s, the need for a structured validation process in the pharmaceutical and medical device industries emerged. 1990s is when FDA released guideline on general principle of software validation. Now, this guidance formalized CSV, emphasizing rigorous documentation and testing to demonstrate the software system function as intended and comply with regulatory requirements. At the same time, the publication of 21 CFR Part 11 by FDA introduced specific requirements for electronic records and electronic signatures around 1997. This regulation required that computerized system managing these records be validated, reinforcing the importance of CSV. Other global regulatory agencies such as EMA and MHRA also joined forces, adopting similar validation guidelines and reinforcing CSV practices across the life science sector. 2000 is where expansion and standardization of CSV occurred. The FDA updated its general principle of software validation guidelines to clarify CSV expectations, further emphasizing the importance of documentation and validation process for software use in regulated environment. The life science industry increasingly adopted computerized systems, and CSV became a standard practice to ensure compliance with regulatory standards. This is also the time when digital tools supporting paperless validation were released in the market. Early 2010, organizations began discussing the inefficiencies of traditional CSV approaches, which were considered overly burdensome and not aligned with modern software development practices. For example, Agile, DevOps. A more risk-based focus was proposed to better align validation practices with software assurance and quality goals. Late 2010, CSA concept was introduced when FDA released the concept of computer software assurance to modernize and simplify the validation process for computerized systems. This is when FDA draft guidance on CSA was announced, emphasizing the reduction of unnecessary documentation and also use of automation and software tools for testing and validation. And 2020s is when the adoption and implementation of CSA really gained traction, and many industry leaders started shifting from traditional CSV approaches to CSA, particularly organizations seeking to implement Agile and CI/CD pipelines. CSA offered more flexibility in integrating modern software practices while maintaining compliance. 2023 is when FDA released its draft guidance on computer software assurance for medical devices. This guidance promotes focusing on critical to quality aspects of software system, leveraging automated testing, reducing documentation burden, and enabling quicker system updates. So CSV has been the industry standard for decades to ensure compliance. So here on this slide, let's take a look at some of the challenges with CSV, which pushed the industry to think critically and evolved. CSV is often viewed as heavily documentation focused, with a tendency to overemphasize extensive documentation to demonstrate compliance. This can lead to a checkbox validation rather than focusing on actual risk and quality. Compliance team may struggle to shift from focusing solely on documentation to adopting a risk-based approach, potentially leading to delays and inefficiencies. At the same time, comprehensive documentation and testing often leads to overwhelming volume of documents that needs to be reviewed and maintained. The volume of documentation creates a compliance burden, which slows down the system updates, it increases the cost, and it also adds administrative overhead. CSV encourages exhaustive testing of the system, which often leads to repetitive and unnecessary tests of low-risk functionalities. Compliance efforts may be wasted on validating non-critical functionalities, which does not add value to the system's safety or quality, but at the same time can lead to significant time and resource requirement. CSV also puts heavy emphasis on performing detailed validation on vendor-supplied system, often leading to duplicating the efforts already done by the vendor. Excessive effort is spent verifying vendor products, sometimes ignoring the real risk areas. The digital challenges associated with computer system validation, on the other hand, arise primarily from the traditional documentation-heavy approach that struggles to adapt to modern digital technologies and development methods. CSV often depends on manual processes and testing, making it difficult to integrate with modern automated testing tools and software deployment platforms. This lack of automation increases human errors and resource consumption. It fails to leverage automated tools, means organizations miss out on efficiencies and risk mitigation, such as continuous monitoring, automated regression testing, or real-time quality tracking. CSV traditionally followed a linear waterfall model, and as mentioned in my previous slide, doesn't align well with modern agile or continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines. These development approaches involve rapid iterative releases, making it difficult to apply the static documentation heavy processes of CSV. Impact of this is that it slows down the release of updates and improvements. It creates a bottleneck for the companies to release the project soon in the production. This delay can also, prevent organization from quickly addressing any software bugs or customer feedback. Validating cloud-based and software as a service solution can be complex under CSV. The traditional CSV approach is designed for on-premises systems and often lacks clear guidance on how to handle externalized third-party hosted services. Ensuring compliance when provider requires new approaches to data integrity, security, and shared responsibilities, which CSV does not adequately address. This can create gaps in oversight and accountability. So the traditional CSV posed several challenges in the context of modern digital environment, including struggles with agility, automation, cloud integration, and emerging technologies. CSA, on the other hand, offers a more flexible, risk-based focused approach while supporting the use of modern testing tool and automation, enabling organizations to fully embrace digital transformation while maintaining the compliance. So let's talk about what exactly critical thinking in CSA is all about. As you can see here on the slide, CSA has flipped the traditional paradigm of CSV by shifting the focus from exhaustive documentation to actual assurance based on a risk-based thinking. It challenges us to rethink validation by asking the right questions. Instead of focusing on how do we ensure compliance, CSA focuses on how do we ensure quality, patient safety, and data integrity. Instead of creating excessive documentation, CSA pushes us towards less burdensome approach so that we are truly testing what needs to be tested to ensure the data integrity or the patient safety. First, let's consider what needs to be validated. Not every feature or function of a system carries the same risk. In the past, traditional CSV might have pushed us to validate everything in the same way, but with CSA, the emphasis is on understanding which aspect of system impact product quality or patient safety. Critical thinking here involves assessing the system's role in the process and identifying high-risk areas. Those are the areas that must be validated with the highest rigor. On the other hand, low-risk features might not require the same level of scrutiny, allowing us to allocate our resources more efficiently. Next is, how much validation is needed? Now, this is a crucial question because over-validating can waste resources and under-validating can lead to risk. CSA encourages us to align the extent of our validation effort with the level of risk involved. Critical thinking comes into play as we balance these efforts. Does this area requires extensive validation, or can a lower level of testing still gives us enough confidence in its performance? By tailoring validation efforts to the actual risk posed, we are able to focus more on testing rather than documentation, and we achieve assurance with the less effort. Finally, what kind of tests are required? So under CSA, we are encouraged to apply a variety of testing strategies that offer true insight into systems reliability. Instead of relying only on scripted testing, we might incorporate unscripted testing, exploratory testing, or even automated testing approaches that better reflects real-world usage. The goal here is to achieve confidence that the system will perform as expected under various conditions. Critical thinking asks us to match the testing approach to the risk level, asking what type of evidence will give us best assurance of quality and compliance. So critical thinking in CSA shifts our focus from merely meeting compliance to achieving a true quality assurance. Now let's break down how critical thinking is applied throughout the CSA-based validation approach. So on this slide, I have listed down some steps. This approach is designed to ensure that we are focused on the most important aspects of the system without being weighed down by unnecessary process and documentation. So we began by defining the intended use of the system. This step might look straightforward, but it's where we lay the foundation of everything that follows. Understanding the system's intended use helps us to determine which functionalities are critical to patient safety, product quality, and data integrity. For example, a system that handles critical patient or clinical trial data or make disposition decisions for the product will have a different validation needs compared to a system that tracks, for example, training records or manage electronic documents. This step demands critical thinking to accurately assess how the system will be used and what could go wrong if certain parts don't work correctly. Next, we move to performing a risk assessment. This is a pivotal step where we analyze and classify the various components or say requirements of the system based on their risk. We don't want to treat all the system components or requirements equally. By critically assessing the potential impact of failures, we can then categorize areas into high risk, medium risk, and low risk. Here, critical thinking means understanding where the greatest risk lie, whether it's in the system function, data handling, or user access, and focusing our validation efforts accordingly. After classifying the risk, we determine the appropriate assurance level or testing type for each of the risk categories. For high-risk areas, we apply the most rigor using robust scripted testing to ensure these critical functions are thoroughly verified. These areas have the greatest impact on system performance, so they require detailed testing scenarios that leave little to chance. Medium risk areas are treated with limited scripted or exploratory testing, which allows for flexibility while still ensuring the system works as intended. Finally, for the low risk areas, we can apply minimal rigor or even no testing based on the low likelihood of impact of failure. This risk-based thinking helps us allocate our resources efficiently, so we focus on what really matters. Now, a key element in this approach is to document only what's necessary. Traditionally, validation has been extremely documentation heavy, often focusing more on producing documents than ensuring the quality. Under CSA, we apply critical thinking to decide what is essential to document. Here we can leverage vendor documentation to avoid duplicating efforts. If the vendor has already provided the validation evidence for certain system functionality, we don't need to redo this work. We can also leverage automation to streamline tasks that are repetitive or time-consuming, which frees up the valuable time and resources for more critical activities. Additionally, we make use of digital tools, focusing on creating digital records rather than cumbersome paper-based documentation, which allows for easier tracking, review, and access. Ultimately, the goal is to focus on the right areas and reduce unnecessary tasks and maintain compliance efficiently. So by using the risk-based assurance, we can ensure that high-risk functions get the attention they deserve without wasting time on low-impact areas. It's a smarter, more agile approach to validation that is perfectly aligned with today's fast-paced digital environment. Now let's take a moment to go over different types of testing in CSA. This is illustrated in the table I have shown on the screen. Each of these testing methods is used depending on the risk level of the system and what we need to focus on for assurance. So we start with scripted testing, which is highly structured with predefined steps and expected outcomes. It's ideal for high-risk system, ensuring consistency and repeatability, especially when compliance is critical. Next is limited scripted testing, which is more flexible but still uses predefined steps to focus on key functionalities. It's perfect for medium risk areas where we don't need to test everything but still require some documentation. For more flexibility, we have unscripted testing, where testers follow broad guidelines but aren't bound by a rigid script. This is useful for medium risk areas where we trust the tester's expertise to find issues without needing excessive documentation. Exploratory testing comes next. This method allows testers to freely explore the system and discover issues that might not be obvious. Particularly useful in low to medium risk areas where there's more room for discovery and less concerns about strict compliance. Then we have ad hoc testing, which is informal and unplanned. It's often used after minor changes or updates to quickly check specific functionality, particularly in low-risk system. Error guessing is a method based on testers' experience. It focuses on areas where they believe issues are likely to occur. It can be applied across all risk levels, but it's especially valuable in higher risk systems where anticipating potential errors is more critical. Now, even though it's not highlighted in the table, I would like to also mention the use of automated testing and testing tools, which plays an essential role, particularly in risk-based approaches like CSA. Automated testing reduces human error and allows us to efficiently run repetitive tests or those that need frequent execution, particularly in high-risk systems. Each of these testing types supports CSA's focus on critical thinking and risk-based assurance, ensuring that we focus our efforts only on high critical areas without overburdening the process with unnecessary documentation. Now that we have covered the benefits of CSA and what critical thinking is all about, like reducing excessive documentation and just focusing on critical thinking, it's clear why organizations should also transition to paperless validation. CSA is all about efficiency and focusing on what matters, and paperless validation directly complements this approach by eliminating the need for paper-heavy processes while making compliance easier and more efficient. By going paperless, we enhance the efficiency, approvals happen faster, testing processes are streamlined, and everyone can collaborate in real time. This aligns with CSA's principle of reducing unnecessary steps. Paperless validation also supports data integrity. With digital systems, we get real-time updates and secure audit trails that are automatically maintained. It ensures compliance with regulations like 21 CFR Part 11, which are critical in a CSA approach. Additionally, there is a significant cost reduction. By moving away from manual paper-based tasks, organizations save time and money, especially by eliminating the need of physical storage. Also, in a paperless validation environment, real-time collaboration allows teams to work simultaneously on the same documents and validation activities, ensuring instant updates, faster decision-making, and reduces delays. Cloud-based platform provides centralized access for data, which enables cross-functional teams such as quality, IT, and regulatory to collaborate efficiently from any location. So when we combine the CSA focus on risk-based validation with the power of paperless tools, we create a streamlined, compliant, and efficient validation process that drives real value, while it also aligns with the growing regulatory push for digital transformation. Now that we have discussed why transitioning to paperless validation makes sense, let's take a moment to explore how CSA and paperless validation are truly a perfect pair. Both approaches share the same goal, efficiency. CSA moves away from the excessive documentation, focusing on risk-based testing and critical thinking. Paperless validation takes this one step further by using digital tools to eliminate manual processes or streamline the workflows, and it reduces the time it takes to get approvals. Together, they allow organization to focus on the areas which matters, removing unnecessary steps from the validation activities. Real-time data management is another area where CSA and paperless validation complement each other. CSA emphasizes real-time risk assessment, focusing on most critical systems and processes. Paperless validation enhances this by providing immediate access to validation data and documentation through digital platforms. So when an issue arises or a change is needed, you can quickly pull up the relevant information, assess the risk in the real time, and act immediately, all without digging through piles of paper. Next, both approaches help with regulatory compliance. CSA focuses on applying critical thinking, which meets regulatory expectation by targeting areas of high importance. Meanwhile, paperless validation ensures the compliance is maintained with automated audit trails, electronic signatures, and digital documentation, elements which are key to satisfying standards like 21 CFR Part 11. Together, they create a system that not only meets compliance requirement, but does so efficiently. Finally, both CSA and paperless validation supports continuous improvement. With CSA's risk-based focus and paperless validation agile digital tools, it's easier to update validated system or implement changes without compromising on compliance, without getting bogged down by traditional documentation processes. So this allows team to stay flexible and quickly respond to new regulatory updates, system enhancements, or business need. In short, CSA and paperless validation together creates a streamlined, compliant, and highly efficient process that drives continuous improvement while reducing unnecessary burden. So to implement paperless validation effectively, organizations need the right digital tool. Let's explore some key technologies that help streamline the validation process and also, ensures compliance at the same time. So in the list, first we have electronic document management system. These systems serve as a centralized repository for all validation-related documents, making it easier to store, retrieve, and manage documentation. EDMS platforms are also equipped with features like version control, audit trails, and e-signatures, which ensures compliance with regulation like Part 11. This eliminates the need for paper-based records and provide an organized, accessible system for document management. Next is validation lifecycle management software, which is designed to automate key validation activities such as creating, executing, and reporting on test scripts. This tool allows for real-time visibility into the validation process, making it easier for teams to track progress and ensure everything is aligned with compliance requirement. VLM software is especially beneficial in collaborative environment where remote teams need to stay connected. Next comes cloud-based platform, which is another essential tool. They provide real-time access to validation data, allowing teams to securely view, edit, and share information from anywhere. This supports continuous validation by enabling faster updates and reviews, which is particularly important for a global organization or those working in dynamic environments. The scalability of cloud solution also allows organization to adapt quickly to changing needs. We also have automated testing tools. These tools help reduce manual effort by automating the execution of validation tests, which not only improves efficiency, but also enhances the accuracy of the results. By automating repetitive tasks, teams can focus on high-level activities, aligning with CSA focused on risk-based testing. Finally, digital signatures and workflow automation are critical for eliminating paper from the approval process. With digital signatures, sign-offs can be managed electronically, which speeds up approval and ensures a complete and secure record of every action. Workflow automation ensures that the right tasks are triggered automatically, further reducing manual intervention and ensuring compliance with regulatory requirements. So together, these tools help organizations fully embrace paperless validation while maintaining a high level of compliance and efficiency. Now, let's take a look how CSA and paperless validation can be implemented effectively using, for example, WellGenesis tool. The tool allows us to streamline the validation process, again, by focusing on critical aspects of system assurance and while eliminating the manual paper-heavy activities. We begin with requirement gathering. Now, this step is all about identifying and documenting the specific validation requirements for each system or process. Using the WellGenesis tool, we can easily track and manage requirement electronically, ensuring that all critical areas are covered. It allows us to map each requirement to specific risk categories in line with CSA principle. Also ensures that we focus on the most important element. One key benefit of the tool is that it allows us to create reusable templates for documents like validation plan or protocols, which can then be standardized and used across the entire organization. This ensures consistency and reduces duplication of effort, helping team focus on system-specific validation activities. Next, we move into test execution. One of the key benefits of using WellGenesis is the ability to efficiently track test execution. The tool captures all testing activities in real time, providing a clear audit trail ready record of what was tested and how. This directly supports the CSA approach by aligning the level of testing with the system's risk level. Additionally, the tool can automatically generate a requirement traceability matrix, which links each test directly to associated requirement. This ensures full traceability without having to manually map every process. Finally, we have reporting and review. So after test execution, the tool generates comprehensive validation reports electronically. These reports provide a clear audit trail and facilitate the review process by offering easy access to all validation records. The tool also ensures that reports are always up to date and ready for review, which is key for ensuring compliance with regulatory requirements, and it also maintains the efficiency within the tool. So this structured paperless approach not only aligns with CSA risk-based framework, but it also simplifies the validation process, making it more manageable and efficient. In the demo, we'll show you how this works in practice using WellGenesis tool. Now, before we go ahead with the brief demo, I would like to highlight the key takeaways and benefits from this presentation. As we have explored today, CSA and paperless validation are a powerful combination for improving both compliance and efficiency. CSA risk-based approach minimizes the unnecessary documentation, while paperless validation takes it further by digitizing these workflows and enhancing the real-time collaboration. We also saw how these approaches not only drive efficiency, but ensure the regulatory compliance through features like audit trails and electronic signatures, which are key for maintaining standards like 21 CFR Part 11. Most importantly, the shift to paperless validation supports continuous improvement, making it easier to stay agile and adapt to ongoing regulatory changes or business need. Centralized real-time access to validation data across team ensures consistency, reduces duplication, and enables faster, more informed decision-making, driving greater efficiency and compliance. Open, clear communication across departments through digital tool fosters collaboration, minimizes error, and it also ensures that all stakeholders are aligned throughout the validation process. Automated workflows and digital tools streamline validation planning and scheduling, which allows team to efficiently allocate the resources or track progress and meet the deadline while maintaining the compliance. Now, to bring these concepts to life, my co-host will walk you through WellGenesis tool that exemplifies how these concepts can be applied in practice and helping you seamlessly implement a paperless validation strategy within your organization. Over to you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that fantastic presentation. Let me just share my screen. So today's demo will be just a high-level overview of VLMS 5.0, which is the newest version of our platform. VLMS 5.0 allows for the traditional CSV approach, of course, but in this current version, we actually implemented a new module called Design Manager. So this Design Manager will allow companies just like yourselves to utilize the CSA approach or even the Agile approach to perform your validation needs. So let's go ahead and play this video. Choosing the right tool will allow you, of course, to design your system to align with your SOP, guidelines, and with all the regulatory needs. It will help you enforce processes and procedures using technical controls. It will increase your efficiency, improve your quality, and integrate with automated testing tool like my co-host mentioned earlier. So here, we're going to just log in to our system. And as you can see, this is my splash page here. Let me just make sure that we are at a higher quality. There we go. So what I'm going to do first is, of course, we need to create our entity, and the entity is any computer software or equipment that you would like to validate. So here, I'm just going through my inventory and just showing you the computer system that we're working on today. As soon as I open this, you will notice that I have all my entity details here, and here we are actually leveraging our system assessments. So system assessments are a series of question and answers driven by common sense logic, just like Pratima was mentioning earlier. And based on your user's response and answers, the platform will intelligently associate the correct level of testing needed, which ensures just the right amount of validation, thus eliminating over or under validation. So here, I will walk you through the different assessments that I've created. For example, here, if you notice in the middle of the page, there is one that shows GXP impact and then GAMP 5. So based on my users' answers, the system has determined that the framework called CSA standard is the one that is appropriate for validating the system. So what does that mean? It just means that based on my user's answers, the system will intelligently tell me which deliverables are mandatory and which are optional, again, making things more efficient and things a lot more standardized in a way. So it allows you to incorporate your internal business processes, SOP guidelines via these assessments. So now that we have our set of deliverables here, as you can notice here, we have two ways of actually fulfilling these deliverables. One is via the normal way, which is the traditional way via our content module, which is traditional CSV, Word document heavy, right? Objective. Or we can utilize our design manager, which is our newest platform, which consists of the ability of supporting SDLC, Agile, and the CSA approach. So this the difference here is in Design Manager, you can allow you to be more agile and define requirements in an object-oriented way versus like the traditional Word document way. So here, let me just walk you through our Design Manager module here. And as you can see in the top, there's different tabs. These tabs corresponds to the different phases that you typically go through when you do the CSA approach. Here, if you're following SDLC or Agile, you can create and develop your user stories, epics, and then from there, organize it via different release plans, and then schedule it via different sprints. And then for traditional CSA, what we can actually do is just create that release plan and then go directly into developing our requirement, which we will see real soon here. So I'm just going to navigate to my requirements. And then here you will notice, give me 1 second here. I will open up that entity that we just created. And then from here, I'm just going to briefly show you the release plan that I've created for it. And here in the release plan, you will see that these are the deliverables that we defined earlier based on our system assessment. From here, I've just associated it with different workflows, risk framework. Again, the risk framework is a set of different process conditions that you can utilize in order to define the level of testing needed to fulfill that requirement. So here you can see that I have initiated my URS and my PQ. Here you can see that I've already approved several, while some are still pending. Let's go ahead and take a look into one of our requirements that we are developing right now. So let's go ahead into our FRS. So here, I've already authored or initiated some of my requirements. As you can see there, the first three have already been associated with a risk and then has already been linked to a reference. So here I've linked them to a specific URS. And as soon as I open it, you can see that the risk level and the risk condition that I've done against that requirement. So there are several ways in which you can author your requirements. One is you can manually do it by adding a row. As you can see here, I'm going to add a row. And then if you notice on the left side, the user ID has been automatically generated. So you don't need to worry about creating that number schema in VLMS Design Manager. That requirements numbering, test case numbering will be automated, and then you can configure it depending on the schema and naming convention that you want. So here I wrote my requirement, and I'm just linking it to my URS here. So what we're doing here is we're basically establishing that trace. So in VLMS, our trace is a living document where you will see later on how easy it is to conduct. So here, another way that we can do it, author document. I saw a question here is like, how do we handle vendor provided system or documentation? So perhaps your vendor has sent you a list of requirements already, or they've authored it already that you can utilize. What you can do is upload it into our system right here. And then what I'm just going to do is I'm going to associate the header against our different mapping tools. And as soon as it loads, you can add them to that FRS that you are currently building. As you can see, each of these requirements are independent of each other. We can work collaboratively or simultaneously with people. So maybe some group or users who have access here will be working, say, on the first 3 requirements, while another groups will be working simultaneously on, say, requirements 6, 7, and 8. So you don't need to be stuck with just completing all the requirement at the same time at the end. Here, you can work collaboratively together on an online platform at the same time. So what I'm going to do here now is I am going to associate, again, a reference against these requirements. And this is as easy as you can see here. After this, what I'm going to do is I am going to lock these. So I can, again, choose just 1, 2, or 3. And then as soon as I lock these, it means that I am able to move these requirements to another phase of activity. So the next phase here that we're going to show you is our requirements assessment. So here we utilize critical thinking to determine the amount of risk associated with this requirement. And based on that amount of risk, there are different process conditions that you can configure to be associated to that risk. So for example, here, I'm just going to open this first requirement. And based on my answers, you will notice that my process conditions will be updated accordingly. So here you can see that if it's low risk, enforcement of screenshots is only necessary if there's failure. You can even add there that maybe just testing coverage is required, or maybe unscripted testing, or no testing at all. So it depends on what you want to define. But for my example here, this is the one that I've set up. Here is an example of the moderate. As you can see, there's more process conditions associated with it. And then finally, here I've created high risk. And on my high risk, you will see that there are more process conditions that will be associated against this. So all of these are configurable depending on your guidelines, your SOPs, and how you want to design. VLMS is very adaptable to your needs. So what we're doing here is we're assuring that by these process conditions, these requirements will function as expected. So here, I'm just going to associate all of these with their requirements, and we'll go back to that requirements page, as you can see. And then now you will see that the risk levels is now associated with these requirements. What we're going to do now is we are going to route this for review and approval, which allows, again, for that collaborative element, which is CSA is known for. So here, I'm just going to route this for approver. I already know who my approver is. And I'm just going to log in and log out just to ensure that you can see that I am performing this task. How will I learn this ValGenesis CSA tool? Victor, my colleague here, and of course, our host, you can contact them and we can schedule, of course, a discovery call and maybe go through a full demo. This is just a high-level overview of the system. So here you can see I'm now logged in as Quinn, and as part of CFR Part 11, which is very important in our industry, I am able to select my reason for e-signature, my unique ID, and my password. And as soon as I do that, those requirements are now approved. So once I go back to my main user, Mark, and he goes back to my design manager, you will notice that the status for the requirements that we just authored is now called approved. So the next step that we're going to do here now is we're going to go develop a test case. So for the test case, again, I've initiated all of these test cases based on that assessment that we've conducted in the beginning, and based on that risk level, these are some of the test cases that we need to develop to fulfill this validation need. So here, I'm just going to open my positive test, and I'm just going to name it positive test A01. And from there, we can select a template. The template is something that you can configure yourself. Here, I just defined it with these different columns to be associated depending on the type of testing that I want. And from here, we can also start building that requirements trace matrix by associating different requirements against the test that we want to develop. So there, I've selected a few URS, and I'm going to go develop further by selecting the FRS that we've just authored. From here, same thing as the requirements. We have two options. One is manually created by adding rows. And from here, just type in your description and your expected results, and you're good to go. And if you notice in that reference columns, that reference that we've selected is already attached to this test case that we are authoring. What's good about ValGenesis is that as you, or maybe some teammates, are developing the requirements, another team in parallel can start developing these test cases at the same time, which is allows for a lot of flexibility and a lot of efficiency. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to import another test. Just a few more minutes, folks. Thank you so much. I know it's already 8 a.m. and we are running a little bit over time, but if you don't mind, I have about 5 more minutes left. And here, I'm just, again, like I showed you earlier, I'm associating the header from the file that I uploaded. And as soon as I select submit, the different test steps that I've uploaded will be populated within my page. And then again, I can pick and choose which one I want. If I don't want it, I can easily delete it. And as soon as I hit submit, all the tests that I want will be populated there. And just like in the requirements, these have automatically created their test case IDs. What I'm going to do now here is we're going to route this for approval. I'm going to select that test case that we just drafted. Good to go. And from here, it's been routed for approval. And just for the interest of time, I've routed it for myself to approve it on the side. So here, from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead into the trace matrix. So here from the trace matrix, you can see here different views that you have. The first view here is our spread view, where you can see the list of the requirements that we've authored. URS is on the left, FRS on the side. If I want a trace view, here you can see that my requirements is on the left side. And if the FRS that we've authored is associated, there's going to be a check mark against it. Here, I'm just going to go through that PT that we just authored as well. And you can see if they're associated, there's a check mark. Here is the test coverage. Just another way to check for your trace view. One is the requirements level view, where you can see all the requirements that are associated with you. Another is the testing level. So if it's covered, it will be listed there with a yes or a no. So let me just, so there, if it's covered, it will say yes. If it's not, it will say no. So again, just an easy way for you to determine which tests have been covered and which requirements have been covered. But my favorite is actually this view, which is the end-to-end coverage. Here you will see all the requirements that you've authored and all the test case that you've developed. You will notice that for the test cases, they're color-coded. Blue means associated and haven't been tested. Green means it's passed, while red means it failed. So later on, you will see what it looks like. Let's move ahead into our test lab. So test lab is where we can execute the test cases that we just authored. So here, I'm just going to assign or create that test case that I want to execute. I've selected positive testing. I'm going to name it a title. And from below here, you can even associate your workflow. So here, I'm going to select the quality team to be my reviewer and my managers as my approver. And below that, if there's any defect, we can assign it to the managers to perform the details. Just a few more minutes, folks. Thank you so much. Now, after this, let's go ahead and execute this test. So I'm going to open up the positive test that we just authored, and I'll be able to execute it immediately. So here, I'm just going to open up that test case that we just created. And this is the actual page where you execute the test. So here, I'm working on test step 1. I write as expected. I can choose my status, so pass. And as soon as I select pass, the audit trail of who conducted that test is immediately populated with the date and time of when it was executed. Here we have a tool called copy as expected. So instead of typing it down, it will copy it character by character. Next, I'm going to show you a few examples of how we can capture objective evidence. So here, all we have to do is select that file. I'm going to select a file here as my sample. We support multitudes of file types, Office Suite, PDF, images, even video. We support that. We can also support screenshots. So here, I'm just going to select the screenshot tool. Using my snippet functionality, I'm going to take a portion of the screen, copy it, and then paste it. And now it will become my objective evidence. I know it's very tiny right here, but on the right side, you will see that the date and timestamp is automatically populated for you. So here's one more. So next up after this, I just wanted to show you if you want to learn more information, if there's like several edits, you can easily capture it there and see it. Lastly here, we're just going to show you what happens if we fail a test step. Remember the process conditions that we've conducted earlier. So here I failed a test step, but since I have not fulfilled some of the process conditions that we've set based on the risk level, I get a warning. So here it says, since this test failed, an attachment is required in order to proceed. So here I'm just going to, again, enter my file, attach my file. Same as before, upload it from your local browser. It will be uploaded within our system. Here, I'm going to attempt to do it again, fail, but I still haven't fulfilled the requirement. It says snapshot is required. So again, I'm going to copy and paste. Adios. Thank you. Greeting from Poland. Paste that evidence again. And then lastly here, what I want to do after I failed this is I want to show you the trace matrix once again. So our trace matrix is a living, breathing feature wherein you can easily see what is happening within the test case that you're developing. So here, if I go to end-to-end coverage, you will see that earlier, these were all blue, and now the items that we passed is now green. And if I open it up, we have a summary of what happened. And here is the failed test step. Again, it is now in red so that you can easily identify that it's red. If you want to mitigate that defect, just go to the defect tab. And from here, you can open it up associate different severity level, assign it to a specific person, and then from there, they can conduct their assessment. So this is just a very high level overview of our platform. If you're interested and into learning more about it, feel free to contact Alex or Palima or anyone from my team. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Jeff, for that fantastic demo. And now I know audience have posed some fantastic questions, and I definitely don't want to disappoint my colleagues who have joined us today. So I would definitely like to take a couple of questions before we wrap up this call, just to cover some of these good questions, what I see in the chat panel. So first question is it required to do rigorous documentation for regulatory tools, validation, or like we can go ahead with risk-based approach with critical thinking to do a less documentation depending on CSA approach? So for a regulatory tool, if we have to follow the CSA approach, again, it emphasizes on the risk-based methodology. So if the tool, you need to assess the risk where the criticality lies. If the tool directly impacts the product quality or patient safety, a higher level of validation rigor, including comprehensive documentation, may be necessary. If the tool is lower impact on critical areas, you can focus on key aspects of its functionality and adopt a streamlined documentation process. So just to align it with the CSA approach, maybe assess the risk, identify which part of the systems are critical to compliance, and try to reduce the redundant documentation and focus only on the areas that ensure that system operates as intended, avoiding documentation which doesn't add any value to the validation process. You can even leverage automated or digital solutions. Paperless validation is a good platform which can help you streamline the process. Next question, can we skip documentation in a CSA approach? This is a great question, and I would say it's a misnomer. No, documentation cannot be skipped in the CSA approach. However, CSA emphasizes focusing on critical thinking and risk-based activities rather than the excessive documentation. So the goal should be to minimize the redundancy, to minimize the non-value added documentation while ensuring that all the necessary compliance element or activities are properly documented. So in CSA, the document should be proportionate to the level of risk, with less emphasis on formalized testing, I would say, testing protocols, and maybe more focus on demonstrating system functionality or data integrity and patient safety. All right, so with this, we have come to the end of the call. Thank you all for joining with us today. I hope this session has provided you with some valuable insights into how modern validation practices can increase efficiency while maintaining the compliance. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was nice to meet you all.
Millennium. IT for people. People for IT.